Hello, welcome to the Big Strategy Podcast. I'm your host and fellow strategist, Jeff Hyatt. This is your go-to spot for real talk with the masterminds of business strategy. It's about sharing stories, insights, and those little nuggets of wisdom to help you unlock big growth. Let's turn the key and spring into action.
Well, welcome everyone to this episode of the Big Strategy Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Hyatt, and I'm honored to be joined from San Miguel, Mexico, by Alison McCauley, the author of a book called How to Think with AI, which, as someone who believes in human-centered AI, it's a topic very dear to my heart. So, Alison, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
You know, reading your book, I've really connected with this concept of not AI replacing people, but AI augmenting workers and how to do that. But more than just giving us a framework, which obviously I'd love for you to talk about, but it's really getting from that theory to practice. And I want to make sure that we cover that today because I get so many questions from folks that every day the news is coming and they feel like they're getting more and more behind, but that actually makes it harder to know where to start. So kind of with that tee up, I'll turn it to you to kind of share with us. Maybe start with a little bit about your inspiration for the topic. How did you find your way to this point in your life?
So I have been working at this intersection of human behavior, us, as individuals and teams and organizations, and emerging technology for my entire career. And so for a wave of technology, from the web to cloud to SaaS to mobile to blockchain and crypto and now AI, I have been really centered at that intersection. And how do we use this emerging technology to truly advance our performance as humans? And so as you can imagine, this moment is more interesting than any I've had my entire career. Now, I've been working in AI for over a decade. But of course, everything changed a couple of years ago. And what I noticed, and the reason I wrote the book, honestly, I actually, it's my second book. Every time I haven't wanted to write a book, I have felt compelled to write a book because I saw a problem. And the problem is that a lot of times when these emerging technologies really start to take hold, people aren't engaging for exactly the reasons you mentioned. They're not sure how to engage. They're overwhelmed and don't know where to jump in. And people need sort of that, a reach out. Like, let me show you what's up. Let me help you understand how to jump in. And also, you have this barrage of things coming at you that makes you feel like it's continually chaotic. And yeah, it is. But at the same time, there's patterns that we can turn to and to help us understand this. And there's also some headlines or major themes that we can engage with that help us navigate the constant barrage. So if we keep centered in those, then we can truly jump in at any time. Although I'll put out a shout out that you better jump in right now.
Yes, it's go time.
It's go time.
So yes, we understand it's not an if anymore. It's a when, as I like to say, around AI. But before we get to that, there's a cognitive revolution, as you call it, that has to take place. And so with that being said, take us back to that point of when you realized you talked about this generation of AI, given your 10-year experience. What was that moment where you realized it wasn't another trend, but something fundamentally different?
That was at the end of November 2022, along with everyone else.
Yes.
Yeah, ChatGPT launched. And it's fascinating because when you look back at that time, it's not like there were a lot of labs that were moving in that direction, right? And so it's not like it was an absolute utter surprise that this, what was happening behind closed doors. What was really different in that moment is that all of a sudden, every single person with an open internet connection had access to the most sophisticated AI in the world, a browser tab away. And that is what changed everything. So individuals have access to the same sophisticated AI that a corporation could have. And it's right there. And that's why we collectively freaked out, because we didn't know what to do with that. And our systems haven't caught up and they're not catching up. And so this is opening all kinds of challenges for us.
It is. And you bring up a great point, is that when we're given great freedom, like you said, it was one thing to go from a physical library, to a digital internet or a digital library. But it's another thing to go from a digital library to something that actually has some reasoning power. We can debate that, and I'll save the guests that deep dive at the moment. But the way we work doesn't transition at that speed. And so the technology's gotten ahead of us. The people need to catch up. But, one thing that struck me, particularly at the beginning of your book, is you kind of share your daughter's breakthrough moment as an aha with that. Do you mind just kind of helping us? Because I think that's one thing a lot of listeners talk about, is they understand that it's kind of important to them, but they understand AI is something that's imperative for their children. So would you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. We do have this open-ended opportunity with AI, and that's part of what is throwing us, and why it is actually forming an invisible adoption barrier, because people are used to developers telling us what our technology can do for us, right? They tell us what our software can do, that you hit a certain button, it does this, or that you can create something in a certain way. But with AI, we have this wide open opportunity, and people don't know how to engage. It's the paradox of choice. We have too many options. You don't know what to engage. And so that's one of the invisible adoption barriers, is when people are confronted with AI, and this is happening at the C-level, it's all senior executives, board members, they also are having this challenge, is they don't know what to ask, what to do, or they're not thinking big enough. So you mentioned the story with my daughter. As soon as we had that November 2022 moment, I, of course, was very activated and drove my entire family nuts, because I was talking about this massive opportunity and how excited I was, and how it was going to change their lives, and blah, blah, blah. And, they were not really engaging. They weren't interested. So I would show them all kinds of fun things. We would do stories by the fire, and I'd show them this, and when image generation came out, I'd show them images, and we would do that together, and they were like, yeah, that's amusing. I was like, they weren't getting the power, right?
Yeah, it was still like a party. It was still a party trick in a sense. Like, oh, that's cool. It can summarize this document, or it can write a poem about something, but definitely a huge disconnect between the technology, its possibilities, and people's reality.
And nothing wrong with party tricks. Like, I love my AI party tricks. I really do. I use them all the time. But, there's a big difference between that and actually unlocking true meaningful value. And when you're in business, you need to unlock true meaningful values. It's not just a big party. So I had this aha moment with my daughter, where she has a processing disorder. And so she's extremely smart, but it takes her a little bit longer to process text when it's in an area she's not familiar with. So she had hundreds of pages of political theory that she needed to understand, and understand it quickly. So she came to me with in distress, like, my normal notebooks and way that I work through this isn't working. What should I do? And so then I sat down with her and said, hey, why don't we think this through with AI? So I gave her an hour-long ethics lecture, because that's what I do. That's what it's like being a kid in my family, is you get the ethics lectures on tech all the time. And this time she was actually listening. And then we sat down, and I showed her, it took about, 3 to 4 minutes to show her how to build a bot, a GPT. And then she built one she named Bob. And Bob, in seconds, would take her hundreds of pages of political theory PDF and organize it in essentially a personalized cliff note. So it would create a table, and it would pull out the key points. And then in 2 levels of sophistication, it would give answers on, like, what does this actually mean? And then it would give the point in the document where that theme was, so that she could use this as a map and then go learn from it and see if she agreed with it. And she shared with me afterwards, she's like, Mom, this unlocked my brain. I could understand it. And I was just like, that was awesome. And so like the same kind of thing, like, what's interesting is that you have people all over at all levels of the organization that are missing the opportunity to unlock direct personal benefit in their work and lives by engaging with AI at a strategic level to hone in on their true needs and opportunities where they really need help to advance. It is such an untapped opportunity, and that's a big problem.
So that's the key point that you just touched on, or one of the key points I feel is executives understanding how to embrace this to have a similar aha moment, or more aptly said, a revolution within their own organization. And we'll set aside the executives who aren't comfortable with that revolution in their own organization, because that's a people challenge. And you can talk about that if you'd like. But from folks who are looking at this through a technology lens, let's start there and tell us a little bit more about, do we look at AI like another piece of software? Is this something where it's just going to be another subscription every month? Or do we need to be rethinking about our relationship with software, and it's more about outputs and the process in between than necessarily the inputs of to a traditional piece of software? How would you frame that?
There's so much to talk about there. Okay, so first of all,
that was a good one, yeah.
Those executives who are comfortable with what's coming, I'd love to talk to them because I've got a perspective on that, and it's time to at least understand it. That's what I'll say for that for now. The other thing is, you asked about the technology. This is actually not, okay, I'll say something that's a little controversial, but I have a point behind it, that this is not a technology revolution. The organizations that are really going to benefit are those who are not just trying to figure out the best technology, especially because we're getting a lot of fantastic choices for the technology. There are a lot. It's about those organizations. The organizations that will win are those that figure out how to activate their workforce to leverage this technology. And that's what they're not doing. People are talking about this like it's a technology revolution. This is a revolution in the way that we work. It is truly going to be a cognitive revolution. And so if you want to win in this, you need to figure out how you're going to activate your workforce to amplify their human potential by using it, especially when we're in this moment where we need what they call in the AI community, human in the loop. We need to have a great deal of expertise to be able to understand if the responses that we're getting from AI are truly beneficial. In fact, the role of expertise is only elevated right now. And so this is truly about connecting the expertise in your organization, across your organization that's close to workflows and customers, to the potential in the technology. And I'll tell you a story. I give keynotes all over the world, and I was giving a keynote to a group of, it was leaders that were brought in from in an ecosystem all around the world. And one of the CEOs in the audience came to me afterwards, and his organization had almost 80,000 people in it. And he said, "We have been using AI for years. I had no idea until your talk. I really didn't understand how we have only scratched the surface of what's now possible. We're only doing 1% of what's possible. We really need to activate our organization." And I'll tell you another story that's really interesting. So actually activating the organization, it takes a lot of intent, it takes a lot of focus, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of patience. But when you're working, say, with an individual team or group of leaders, you can make an incredible difference in the room in a few hours. So I do these workshops, for example, where I'll take teams that they might have a lot of skepticism. There's usually a broad range of familiarity with the technology in the team. People aren't sure often how to engage. It's just like chaotic in their heads. They don't know what to do to navigate, to move forward. So I give a little bit of talk to give everybody a common language. And then what we do is we focus in, we go analog. Actually, we're using flip charts and whiteboards and Post-it notes. And we're not talking about the tech. We are talking about what will truly advance your business. So we're asking questions about what would you do without any limitations? How would you want to extend your core capabilities to develop new markets? Where is there the most friction in your business? Where are your blocks? Like, these are the introspective questions that we talk about from a strategic and business level.
Let me ask you this question. Like, when you talk to people, what are they saying? What are executives saying are their biggest blocks or the biggest challenges? And are they looking at AI as a savior, or are they looking at AI as part of the solution?
Well, here's how it works is we're not even talking about AI at this moment. We're talking about your business needs. So the focus is talking about your business needs. And once you figure it out from a strategic level, what your business needs are, without talking about AI, then I've got some decision frameworks to help surface candidates to be your best, some of your most meaningful business needs to attack with AI. So you surface those, the group selects one or two, and then usually you do breakout teams. And then
And what are examples of those, just to help folks kind of, put themselves in the room? What is it? The same things that we've seen in the past? Is it raising revenues, cutting costs, making people more efficient, et cetera? Is it outside forces? Like, what are the challenges that are bubbling to the surface?
It's your normal business school stuff. Like, we need to accelerate product development so that we can increase revenue. We need to build our muscle to enter new markets more quickly. I mean, it's anything. So that's the thing, is like, people don't know how to apply this. So start with your biggest business challenge, like your biggest opportunity, the area where you can most advance. Then surface those that might be the best candidates for AI. I've got a decision framework to help with that. And then you figure out how to use AI with that. So in these workshops, I actually get executives, some of whom haven't really engaged with AI themselves, to co-develop with AI a point of view, a rich point of view on how they're going to attack their specific business challenge with AI, and then do lightning talks on it. So in a course of 3 hours, we can go from not knowing how to engage to a library of possible use cases, prioritize, and several points of view on how to attack a couple of these through AI. Like, it's an incredible transformation.
What I love about your experience is that what we're talking about are going back to a jobs to be done framework. I mean, people still have the same jobs to be done in a corporate environment. And I think the knee-jerk reaction may be, well, do I need to adjust my outputs because of this new technology? And that's a flawed approach. Whereas what I'm hearing you say is, let's understand it's the same problem you faced. This is another tool in your toolbox, but let's align that we're still focused on the same goal. And then the technology is in service to the people achieving that goal, not the people as sort of blindly following this new technology in the hopes that it gets us to that goal. Is that right?
That's exactly it. It's well said. I mean, you can get somewhere a little bit by experimenting chaotically without, having purpose. But the key thing to really advance your organization is to focus in on, where do you need to advance, and how do we use this new tool to do so? And that's exactly what I help organizations do, because so many are not sure how to do that. This does work differently. All of our workflows, all of our traditional digital change playbooks, they're built on traditional software. And traditional software always gives you the same answer, assuming it's properly debugged. It works fixed parameters. Generative AI is totally different. It never gives you the same answer twice. It's open-ended. It just doesn't fit our traditional playbooks. We need to shift our playbooks. And so I do a lot of work with organizations to think about, how do we activate our organization given that our traditional playbooks are no longer sufficient?
At the Berkeley Innovation Group, we are a strategy consultancy and AI advisory firm focused on mid-market companies looking to unlock big growth. In contrast to management consultants' typical top-down, hypothesis-driven approach, Big uses a curiosity-inspired, bottom-up approach, leveraging customer insights to drive strategy co-creation. Learn more about our approach by downloading our ebook at biginnovates.com/ebook. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back, everyone. We've had a wonderful conversation so far with Alison, and what I've really taken away from our conversation is that people don't know about the technology, but before they even don't know about the technology, they're not thinking big enough. And not thinking big enough. All big puns welcome here on the Big Strategy podcast. But you touched on something really important, and that's activating the workforce. In order to do that, you talked about the difference between AI and traditional software and the benefit that the AI is not going to give you the same response every time because it's constantly gathering new information, whereas software is set in its algorithms and its goal is to give you the same output every time. So as executives are kind of realigning to this new framework, how do you coach them, or what is your approach to helping executives understand this change?
So it depends if you're asking it from an individual executive level or a team level or an organizational level, because there's different.
Let's ladder up, start small, go big.
So fantastic. So from an individual basis, what's really important is that you're finding C-level executives, board members aren't actually often, or a very low percentage, are truly engaging with the technology to deliver value into their lives. And I can tell you that the best way to understand the AI opportunity is to get hands-on in the technology. So how do you do that in a way that delivers incredible value to an individual and is worth the time to do so, even if we're talking a few hours to start to become familiar? And you do that by, just like you would with an organization, figuring out, what do you really need to do to evolve? What do you want to do to advance your life? And go and develop a point of view on what you want to achieve, and then use that, go to AI with that and start using it. So for example, like you might find that you want to work on your personal relationships, maybe with a spouse, you want to work through that, like work through that on AI. If that's something that you want to deepen a relationship with a spouse, start working. We're talking about very deep things, very deep challenge.
Yeah, you went right in there. But I agree. I share that is I love to get outside and to go for a walk with an AI companion and just talk to it. It's amazingly refreshing. And to your point, the more you share with the AI, the more it knows about you as a person, and the more it can tailor itself to what you need.
So I'll give you an example that I hear a lot of examples because I've traveled all over the world working with people on this. But this one blew my socks off. So I was talking to a client, and they told me a story that their spouse had uploaded all kinds of journals over the last 10 years and asked AI to help identify thought patterns that weren't serving them. That's deep.
Wow.
Okay. So we're talking individual level. Like I'm saying, go deep, and one of the things I do that I find most rewarding is executive coaching around that, because it's just so much fun to see these ahas and unlocks, and it doesn't take long. Okay. Team level. As a team, it's really understanding. I've noticed that organizations that or teams that are really being effective with this are doing certain things. One is they're really taking the leap and jumping in before the landscape is clear, because guess what? It will never, ever be clear again. Like these are right now, we're in the quiet, slow time, and it's just going to get exponential. So that's coming. So jump in now. So take that leap. The second thing they're doing is they're really focusing with what are the key questions we have as a team. And that can include like, not only how are we going to advance our organization with this, our team, the way we work, but also we really need to work out this data question. We really need to work out this, privacy piece. Like, so focus those and develop a SWAT team around that to address it. The other thing, which kind of goes with that, is to make it a team sport to learn. So we no longer are in a situation where one person can know enough. The success in this next era will depend on the strength of our learning networks. So create learning networks in your teams, across teams, and outside of your organization to amplify your ability to find and ingest knowledge. So make it a team sport. And there's a lot of fun things that you can do. No code hackathons or curiosity cafes where you're swapping stories, and people love this. Whenever you put it in place, like they're always oversubscribed. People totally dig it. The next thing is to really establish feedback channels. You must have feedback channels to make sure that you're surfacing innovation that's happening and supporting good innovation. You're funding it appropriately with resources to help bring it to scale, et cetera, et cetera. But also that you're hearing concerns and you're addressing them. And so that two-way feedback, that develop feedback channels with great intent. And the last thing, so there's 5 things that really teams that are more effective doing, is an oldie but goodie in the change management world, which I've worked in since the inception of the field, is to do storytelling. So make sure that you are finding the stories of success, you're telling them, you're celebrating them, and you're also talking about the hard stuff on the journey to get there, because there's so much learning that happens in that journey. And so you want to talk about the challenges that were met and those that were resolved and those that are still not quite resolved. So storytelling is an incredible mechanism. And so organizations that are doing a really good job, and honestly, not many are really doing a great job yet on this, but to really do that storytelling. And so I'll now take it to an organizational level. You're doing all of that across an organizational level. That's where it really starts to matter. And the other thing that I'll really emphasize is that what we're finding, through my research, I've got these multiple 6 dimensions that are showing why digital change playbooks are breaking. 3 are because of the challenge of AI. So 3 are around how it's arriving, like the adoption of it is very different. And 3 are around how we're feeling. Like there's a lot of big feelings around this. So what we need to do is come up with a new way of approaching this. And this is not a world where centralized innovation that goes top down and gets rolled out in a waterfall across the organization works. The organizations that are truly going to find value in this are those that are introducing models of decentralized innovation where you can activate the entire organization and you're equipping your people to discover and amplify value at every single role in the organization. And hey, we're not set up for that. This is totally new, right? We're not talking about CRM or procurement software here. Like we are talking about something that is totally different from organizations have encountered. And so I do a lot of work with the emerging best practices around how do we design and encourage and activate our organizations to truly leverage this opportunity. And it's emerging, like the playbook is emerging. There is no specific playbook, but there are patterns that are working better than others.
You said so much, and capturing the things that really caught my ear were, first of all, we have to be personally vulnerable with the AI. This idea of AI stealing our data, I mean, our data is already out there. So there's really not much about us that isn't already known.
At a corporate level, though, we have to be very careful. So
tell us more.
Well, so data has always been valuable. It's extra valuable now, right? So our only moat is really around our data. This technology is open source. So much of it is open source and widely available. It will become more so. So your data is your moat. Protect your corporate data. Don't feed the LLMs your data. And so make sure that you're working with your AI responsibility team to ensure that you're giving your workforce the proper guidance to protect your data.
And you're exactly right. And I meant in terms of personally vulnerable from the perspective of, upload your writings to AI, personal writings, right? Not disclosed information, but just personal writings and say, tell me about me.
And upload your feelings.
Right. What are my thought patterns? What are my blind spots? What are the mental models I tend to rely on when I'm thinking or addressing situations? A colleague challenged me. He told me a story. He said, I asked ChatGPT who it thought I was. And he was like, it pretty much called me out. Like, you teach at this university. You've like right down the line. And then when transitioning from an individual level to a corporate level, this idea of focused teams around data, your proprietary data to drive that initial value is important. But sustaining that through learning networks. And that dovetails well into the idea, what I would call that innovation funnel is, AI is not the fairy dust that just because I make one investment, it's going to fix X number of problems. You actually need X number of potential use cases and allow those to organically combine and evolve and mature into those few business impacts that you see out the other end. And finally, I love the idea of storytelling. I mean, that's my mission here with this podcast, is to help others tell their stories. And in this case, you've said that's really important in terms of helping communicate this across the organization.
Stories are everything. I'll tell you a funny thing is that people tend to think that with AI, they can put their brain in a jar. But here's the deal. If you want real value from AI, you're going to have to think harder than you ever have. You get AI to push you to think harder.
Well, tell us about that. I mean, how can AI push me to be a better thinker? Doesn't that risk who I am as a person?
Yeah, so I'm actually working on a course on creativity and AI right now. It's fascinating. And I'll give an example of even writing the book. So I believe very strongly in the importance of the human creative struggle. And it is so painful, that creative struggle.
Yes.
Like, right?
Yes.
Writing a book.
Well, we talked about that in our prep call, was this idea of, right, AI can't write the book because there's still value in that human creative struggle. So please, yeah.
So there are many very interesting studies that are starting to show that the more sophisticated AI becomes, the more danger we have that we will fall asleep at the wheel, and that we delegate our decisions and don't think them through when we turn to AI too early. So this is actually an incredible discipline that we need to develop, where we work to fully mine the resources of our human organic brains before turning to AI. And we strategically turn to AI to push us. And this is something that, we've never had to think about before, right? So we're not used to this. It actually takes discipline, just like it would to, eat healthy or go to the gym. And so for the book, I wrote 2 complete versions of the book. I write versions. So I wrote one whole version, then I threw it out because the world had changed, and wrote another one without AI, without any help from AI, because I wanted to mind my brain. And that was hecka hard. Okay. But I believe in fully ensuring that I'm delivering the best result. Then I would start to game out with AI. One of my all-time favorite prompts is, here's what I think. What did I miss? Ask me 5 questions to help me understand how to question how I could do better, or like, how do I evolve, or challenge me, be a provocateur and challenge me from these 3 different personas. You're just using it. If you want to grow, if you want to evolve, AI is the best opportunity to do this, short of intensive therapy.
Well, I love that. And, Charlie Munger famously said that he never really voiced a position until he could argue the opposite of that position, as well as his biggest critic. And that really forces us to do exactly what you said. And hopefully that can cut through some of the noise that we get today. One of the topics that came up in your book that I think dovetails really well into creativity, and maybe you could pull apart this idea of purposeful play, or how do we play as adults, and can technology like AI be part of play, or should it be distinctly separate from play?
Okay, so there's like all these different angles of play in AI. So I'll cover some. So I studied hundreds of early adopters, successful early adopters, to find the patterns that they use to help as a foundation to help others that were new and newbies and not early adopters to learn how to use the technology. And one thing that I found was that play was very essential in the way that early adopters started to use the technology. They were playing with absurd scenarios and ridiculous prompts to kind of get a feel for what the tools did. And it was really an important way to learn about AI. And the way they did it is super chaotic and doesn't really work for people who aren't attuned to be early adopters. So I translated it into a methodology that actually works for everybody in the book. But that's one angle, is play can help us learn about AI. But here's another thing. Forever, we have seen, there's lots of research that backs this up. We have seen that play stokes creativity because it allows us to do things without judgment. It allows us to explore and experiment a space we normally wouldn't. And it also drives innovation. So when we're playful, it helps to wake up our brains and our neural pathways to work and imagine in a new way. And so that has been extremely helpful. Guess what? Here's the third angle. AI is a fantastic partner to play with. So you can imagine, like, I'm constantly running through in a multimodal way, absurd scenarios to stoke my thinking. So you might ask an image generator, what happens when buildings grow like plants? You might take that into video and see what happens. Maybe you're someone working on future, design in a city, and maybe that's helpful to you. You might ask, a chatbot to say, give me a sci-fi story about if we were to have buildings grow like plants, what implications would this have for society, for the world, blah, 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 blah. So that's playful, like being playful, or even doing an improv game. Okay, AI, we're going to play improv. Let's do some yes and. And we just play and ideate and build on ideas. Honestly, if you have a challenge you can't get through, putting yourself in a play mode, even for 10 minutes with AI, and then turning back to it, or taking a walk and then turning back to it, is extremely effective. We have such a wide open landscape of things that we can do here. This is about how you grow as a person and amplify what you are uniquely good at. It's not the only thing AI can help you with, but it's a huge opportunity for literally everybody on this planet.
For people who just look at AI as a chance to summarize a PDF, or just help, from a student perspective, help me get through this assignment, etc. And when you reframe it like that, is to make it a collaborator in play and in building your creativity, not in being creative itself, but in helping augment humans in their creativity. My mentor, Clark Kellogg, famously says, to have a good idea, take a walk, take a nap, take a shower. Maybe we should add chat with your AI to that list.
Do it all. Do all of them. Yeah, I think the real opportunity is to understand how AI can help us be better at what we do best. And believe me, not everyone's going to do that. So if you're a parent, you should be actively leaning in to understand and engaging and modeling for your children how you can use AI to be better at what you do best, not to use it to delegate your thinking, because those kids that do that, they're not going to be the winners in this new world.
Well, I tell parents, executives who are parents, and I also tell my students, is that liberal arts majors, philosophy, psychology, etc., and are going to be the more valuable degrees going forward, not the traditional coding, etc., computer science degrees, because that will become the commodity.
Yeah. Did you hear that McKinsey was hiring philosophy majors to interrogate AI systems?
They should.
Yeah. So that's fascinating. And I'm also hoping, this is one of my hopes, is that perhaps when we have a reallocation of time, because AI has taken over some of the more rote things in our life, that perhaps we'll have a resurgence of the humanities and the arts, and truly authentic humanities in the arts. And so I look forward to that, if it should happen, which it may or may not.
Yeah, I've had a great experience myself, and I was inspired by, we were using Bolt in my classroom to do some digital prototyping, and Eric Simons, the CEO who will be on the podcast, he was talking about the idea of product managers as coders, and how does that change the dynamics within a corporation if those tasks of coding are done by engineers, but AI can facilitate that product manager themselves to do that coding. But with that being said, as I took that on myself and did some of my own coding, I have a personal assistant AI that I built, and honestly, I can get my morning off to a fresh start in about 30 minutes in terms of just taking care of the logistics. It prioritizes, orders them, drafts responses that I can edit before sending, and then I don't have to come back to that for a few hours. And those few hours that it has freed up gives me the opportunity to have wonderful conversations like we're having today. As we're getting towards the end of the conversation here, knowing that you're a parent and a longtime AI researcher, but also advocate, tell us about, rather than asking a generic question of where is AI 5 years from now, someone who has a child who's maybe in high school or college, what should a parent be doing to equip their children for what may be coming ahead?
Sam Altman the CEO of OpenAI, has a sign on his desk that says, "No one knows what happens next." So here's the deal. It's going to be hard for your kids. I'm a parent of 2 kids, and that's something that's really hard for me to stomach. But that's the reality. Teach your kids to be agile. Teach your kids to know how to learn. Teach your kids to use AI tools to be better at what they do best. That's one area. A second area is to model a good behavior with AI from an ethics standpoint, from using it to really think harder and work harder. That's a really important thing. And to bring the conversation to the dinner table. So lean into this, don't avoid it. It's insane to think that even today, people are really trying to, in an education environment, we need to reinvent the way we educate to be able to meet this new reality. And we're not there yet. And so it's a very difficult time for children today because the temptation to just have AI do your work for you is very high. As a parent, it's incredibly important to instill a value that you need to work hard and be better than these tools and use it to get better. And, I'm fortunate in that I've been teaching my children that for 20 years. And so I feel really salad that they got that. I think it's a lot harder for people whose kids are very early and young, 3 and 5 and 7 and 10. And that's harder. That's a lot harder because you need to be able to dive into this with even more urgency than ever before.
Very well said. And I've quoted my friend Martine many times when talking about his children. He said, either learn how to fix people, fix animals, or fix robots as his advice. But I appreciate that. And I appreciate your perspective as well, which is who are we raising them to be? What are our values and expectations? And those values and expectations should align or should naturally transfer to AI. And again, not to shortcut the process, so to speak, but certainly to be more efficient as they continue to deliver more to their peers, to society, and not just use it as a way out.
The Vatican put out a 20-page paper on AI and humanity. It's a fascinating read, no matter what your religious background. In it, there's a quote that talks about how we, to navigate this newness of our lives, we need to have a wisdom of the heart. And I think a lot about that because it could be that to navigate what's ahead, we need to be more human than ever.
Well, thank you for giving me, ending us on such a great insight and also giving me something to read this afternoon. So thank you. Having a goodness of the heart. And I think that's really a wonderful place. So Alison, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. Tell folks where they can learn more about you.
So my website is Alison McCauley with one L, AlisonMcCauley.io. And I post a lot on LinkedIn. So reach out, follow along on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. And we'll put those links in the show notes. Well, with that, I just want to thank you all for listening. Key takeaways that I had from today's conversation were AI is not an if, it's a when. And that only increases the urgency of how we need to be ethical and mindful about how we approach it, not only with our employees, but also with our family, friends, and most importantly, children, because the only thing we know about the future is that it is unknown. And the best thing we can do is prepare ourselves as people. So, Alison, thank you. And we'll see you again very soon.
Thanks so much. This has been fun.